We're Hassani and Danielle Pettiford, and we're a real couple with real problems who almost called it quits.
I was very frustrated. I became very disconnected, very jaded and cold.
We have 4 children, going on 20 years of marriage, and we practice what we preach.
Our mission, to change the way couples relate to one another and teach them the skills needed to improve the quality of their relationships. This is the Couples Academy Show.
Well, welcome everyone to the Couples Academy Show. It is good to have you all, no matter where you may be dialing in, tuning in from around the world. Maybe you're here in the United States, or maybe you're in Europe or Africa or the Caribbean, the Middle East, wherever you are. We're glad that you're a part of our community. My name is Hassani.
I'm Jewel.
And I'm Lakeisha.
And we are Couples Academy practitioners. We are in part 4 of a series. I think this is part 4. I can't keep up, but we're going to wrap it up today. And this is Why I Cheated on My Partner, part 4. Part 4. That's right. We've been talking about all of the reasons that have contributed to such a devastating thing that can impact a marriage. Getting into the heart, getting into the mind of where that person is, getting into the fabric of what's going on inside of the household that's been a contributing factor. We're going to hit 3 points here today, and I'm glad we're able to do that. But before we do, this weekend, we're excited. It's a last chance weekend. We have a few couples coming. There's room for more. But once again, November the, let me just put this up here. November the 11th through the 13th. That's right. So if you haven't signed up, make sure you do so. We're excited because we do have people who are registering for December already. They're like, listen, before we end this year, we want to make sure that we set the foundation right for life in 2023. So they're doing it. If you are new to the Couples Academy Show, not familiar with the Last Chance Weekend is, take a look at this and we'll be right back to get started with today's conversation. That is right. Last Chance Weekend. So make sure you go ahead, click the link in the description and get registered because it's going to be a phenomenal, fantastical, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious experience that you do not want to miss. All right, we're going to dive right in. We're talking about the reason why I cheated on my spouse, and we're going to bring these power-packed influences into the conversation this morning. The first thing we want to hit is this. I had a pleasing personality and lacked boundaries. So this is really 2 things going on here. There's nothing wrong with having a pleasing personality, but it's about being a pleaser. There are certain individuals who are just pleasers. They don't know how to say no. Whatever someone's request is, okay. Because their goal is to make someone else happy, even at their own expense, even when it compromises the integrity of their relationship. So I want to talk about that first and then transition into the importance of having boundaries. And when you lack that, you're setting yourself up for the possibility of a downfall. So I want to bring Jewel into the conversation first. There's certain personalities that are they're just pleasers. All they want to do is accommodate people, even when it goes against their own moral code. Talk to us about this.
And there's really no reason why you can't be. Nevertheless, what you don't want to do is, I always hear people say, well, I don't want to treat my spouse like a child. I don't want to have to, ask them where they're going, or ask them when they're coming home, who they're talking to. If they want to give me that information, that's fine. I'm not saying treat them like a child, but you have to have some type of structure, some boundaries, something to say, I care. Believe it or not, when you allow someone to just do what they want, you just kind of have that emotion like everything's okay. 9 times out of 10, you're saying okay, you don't really feel that it's okay. Then you also are telling them that maybe she doesn't care as much as she says she does, because she's letting me do whatever I want to do, or he's letting me do whatever I want to do. And it just opens up a door for when someone else is in their life that has a little bit more grit to them, that, it's exciting for that somebody cares. What are you doing today? When are you coming by? How was your day? Or, can I see your phone? Whatever. The fact that someone else is taking an interest in their daily life makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, yeah. Lakeisha, pick up on that. I want you to talk about the pleaser and then the whole lack of boundaries. What are your thoughts on this particular reason why infidelity takes place?
Well, if someone naturally is a pleaser and they have difficulty with saying no, after a certain point in time, that's going to come to a head, right? You're going to get tired of always pleasing everybody else and not being pleased, which is exactly what you started this conversation with, Asani, and talking about being a pleaser, but also about getting pleased, right? It's a mutual thing in relationships where there are going to be times where you're going to be the pleaser, but there should be some points in time where you are experiencing pleasure as well. And so when you're always saying yes, you never say no, you often feel as if nobody's looking out for you. And that can lead to resentment. And we already know what happens when resentment sets in. You may try to talk to your spouse about it, and maybe they receive, maybe they don't. But if you don't begin to experience someone pleasing you, then you may start taking matters into your own hands, ultimately seeking that pleasure outwardly.
That's a fact. Oftentimes pleasers, people have a pleasing personality. They're very giving, they're very altruistic, they're great helpers, they're always accommodating. But interestingly enough, those who have that disposition are the ones that oftentimes don't ask. See, they assume that you should know. And you
Mhm.
should do for me what I've done for you. And oftentimes they don't speak up and articulate what they desire and what they need. And to your point, when they don't get it, they have a built in resentment. And that built in resentment can sometimes cause them to operate in passive aggressive ways, and they make decisions that don't serve them or the marriage. So that's an excellent point. Now, the boundaries piece, I think, as Jewel, alluded to it earlier, it's important to have boundaries. It's not about treating anybody like a child. It has nothing to do with that. Like, if you want your marriage to work, there's got to be a shared value system. And when you don't have boundaries, whether they be relational boundaries or even boundaries that you've placed on your own self, like your own internal moral code, it can lead to the next one. The next one is it just happened. It just happened. It was a one night stand. It was unplanned. It was, and I've regretted it. And oftentimes, one night stands can happen because you don't have boundaries. Like, you didn't know that it was inappropriate to be at a bar talking to another woman for hours. Like, at some point, something should have kicked in and said, you know what? This is probably, I don't want my good to be evil spoken of. I don't want her to misinterpret what it is that I'm doing. If my spouse was here, she probably wouldn't like this. So, you know what? I'm just going to cut back, and when you don't have boundaries, when you don't have your own rules to govern your life by, it is so easy to find yourself in situations that you had no clue how I got here. And boom, in a moment, everything can come tumbling down. What are your thoughts on that,
Can
ladies?
can I just say that if that resentment is there and you don't have boundaries, then nothing is going to stop you from reaching out to someone else or welcoming that attention, especially if you feel as if you're not getting that attention at home. So nothing will stop you and say, fool, get up from the bar and go home. Like, what are you doing? Even when the conversation turns wrong. which when there's a shift in the conversation. And if you don't have those boundaries, nothing shifts in your mind or in your heart and your spirit that you need to get up and go home. And typically there's alcohol involved at the bar too, which is going to lower your inhibitions, right? Now, we're not using that as an excuse, but we do understand it makes you loose, makes you relaxed, and you feel more comfortable then engaging in conversation that maybe you would not normally engage in. So the worst time for you to go hang out or you to go to a bar or go to a club or go party or whatever is when you were in marital discord. Like, that is not the time to do that, because you're not thinking with a clear head. You're emotional, you're all over the place. And that will be the time that the enemy will send that person, the tempter, to tempt you.
And Jewel, we don't Jewel and Lakeisha, we don't want to blame it on the alcohol, but to your point, alcohol does do something to you. People intentionally use, for instance, if you're with your spouse, you want to have an intimate night, sometimes people will have a glass of wine or have a drink because it sets the mood and it puts you in a vibe and in a mindset and in a feeling that makes it conducive for you to do whatever you're going to do, right? And so this is why I have many couples that I work with that literally have rules. Listen, when you go out with your boys, there's a 2-drink minimum or there's a 1-drink minimum, because when you're in certain environments and you're drinking, to your point, you take on personalities that you normally wouldn't have when you didn't have the drink. So either you become calm and open and relaxed, or you become hyped up, more aggressive, more assertive. So it's interesting how they call alcohol spirits. I always wonder, why do they call it spirits? That's a whole nother conversation. But if the wrong spirit gets inside of you, it can drive you to do things that are compromising. And so, Jewel, I want you to talk about this, because when I hear the term "it just happened," those 3 words are triggering words for me. What do you mean it just happened? To me, it's not taking ownership and responsibility. I think that there are micro decisions that take place along the way that lead to the ultimate decision of betrayal. So what are your thoughts on this "it just happened" terminology?
When I hear "it just happened," the first thing I want to know is, when it just happened, what were you feeling? What type of emotion, or what happened earlier in the day, or what happened last week, whatever. Something has happened that allowed you to put yourself in that predicament for it to just happen. Were you having a disagreement with your spouse about something and you went to the bar, or you went to a club, you went somewhere that you normally wouldn't go for it to happen? Were you on a business trip and someone that you normally don't entertain, you entertain for it to just happen? It doesn't just happen. Something inside of you, some emotion, something mental, whatever is going on, that you allow these doors to be open. I've always said, if you're somewhere that you would not take your wife, don't go. If you're having a conversation with someone that you wouldn't have with your spouse with you, don't have it. Then these things won't just happen.
I totally agree with you 1000%. Tiffany has a powerful comment. She says, I mean, there should be marital boundaries we both respect, and my husband doesn't seem to respect them because there's been multiple emotional affairs. A question came in yesterday: are emotional affairs actually real? And they are real. And we talked about how they can be just as damaging, if not more damaging, than an actual physical affair. And so it's important that we really clarify what an emotional attachment is, because many would say, we're just talking, we're just friends, we just talk about what happened on the weekend, we're just opening up. But the foundation of all communication is intimacy. When I'm allowing you to enter into my heart and my mind, my thoughts and my feelings, and there's a connection, and I feel like, man, you're such a good listener. I wish I could just have free-flowing conversation with my spouse the way I do, with you. It's just so difficult. It's just so hard. And then you begin anticipating these conversations. And over the course of time, chemistry is developed and a bond is connected. And then all of these things happen, and you are thrusted into this entanglement that you didn't see coming because we were just friends. And so this is why it's important to really understand what an emotional affair is and how we can unconsciously step into it and then come up with the words, well, it just happened.
Can I say, man, the key to boundaries really is respect for yourself and others. And if you have no self-respect, then I can't expect you to respect me or anybody else. Because if you think about it, when people do engage in affairs, not only are they not respecting themselves or their spouse, but they're not even respecting the other person that they're bringing into this particular situation. So it all starts with the individual, right? And like you said, Jewel, nothing just happens. What was going on inside of you that you allowed it to happen? There were so many. The Bible talks about God will give us a way out, right? So what were you doing when you got those different ways out, when you had an opportunity to abort and you kept going? So there's something going on inside of you that did not stop you before you went all the way, that it didn't stop you when those conversations that you're referencing, Hassani, got inappropriate. Like, why did nothing click in your head that, man, this is probably not a good thing and this is not going to end well? And why aren't you talking to your spouse?
Or even think, if I do this, this is going to hurt my spouse. Simple as that. I mean, you can be right there and be like, if I do this and she finds out, or matter of fact, she don't even have to find out. The guilt that you're going to have to live with, is it worth it?
Absolutely. Deborah says, yes, no respect for anyone, robbing spouse of all of that. My STBX, I have no clue what that means. Got into something he didn't know how to get out of. Anybody know what an STBX is?
No, but I'm on a mission to discover.
We need to find that out. Another comment says, how do I talk to my husband about boundaries? He shuts down because he doesn't know how to communicate with me about us. I think, one of the things that we always recommend, if you go to your husband with a boundaries conversation or your wife with a boundaries conversation, they may have an instant resistance to anything you have to say. They may be off-put. I'm a grown man. I don't need you telling, that type of thing. One of the things that we encourage you to do is sit down and watch the video together. It's almost like Danielle and I were struggling with finances. When I had my opinion, it was me telling her what to do and vice versa. We agreed that we were going to submit to someone else's wisdom and learn from them. And even if what they said was similar to what our spouse said, it was something about hearing it from someone else with no agenda, didn't know the history. They weren't biased or partial to any one of us. So we were both more receptive. And so likewise, if you believe that boundaries is important in a relationship, let the messaging come through someone else. It may make him more receptive. And when you both play the role as student and you're not the teacher teaching him as the student, you'll be surprised how much more you can accomplish when you approach it in that manner. Listen, we have a few questions, but we want to go to a quick commercial break. So stay right there. We're going to get to your questions on the other side of this break. Be right back. All right, guys, we're back. We're talking about why I cheated on my spouse. This is part 4. We got clarity on what STBX is. Maybe I'm just old and I just exposed myself, but it means soon to be X. Soon to be X. So yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that clarity. Now, I told you, this is mutually beneficial. We learn from you, you learn from us. We all become better people. There is a comment in here I want to get to. The question is, do you think death can contribute to infidelity? We did a series some time ago and we talked about high risk affairs and how there are high risk factors that contribute to an affair. And we really unpacked a lot of it. And death absolutely is one of them. Because what happens when death takes place, we go through our own individual grieving process. Some of us have learned how to grieve in a healthy manner. Some of us have not. And so during that vulnerable state, we have seen people confide in others. And that emotional connection and that vulnerability may have led to an affair if you were the one affected by the death. Or we've seen other situations where maybe the spouse is the one who's affected by the death and maybe they've just shut down and they're not functioning and operating the way they had been prior to the death, and it takes them time to kind of get back to their space. And so it creates a loneliness or an isolation for the other spouse, and then they venture off into connecting with somebody else. So we've seen it happen on both sides. It is a contributing factor. If that's something that you've experienced, there's this term, death by 1,000 cuts. Like, what makes the affair that much worse is the circumstances surrounding it. So not only did you cheat, you cheated on me with my sister. Not only did you cheat, you got me an STD. Not only did you cheat, there's now a child. Not only did you cheat, you did it while I was pregnant. Not only did you cheat, you did. So there's all these circumstances. And I will say, there's no ideal scenario that makes cheating better, right? There's never a perfect opportunity or time to do it when it's less impactful, but the layers and the complexities of life can make it more painful. Anybody want to speak to that? Okay, well, maybe not. Then we'll go to the next point. All right. So we're talking about the factors, the reasons why people cheat. Let's go to the third one. You kind of alluded to this earlier, Keisha, with some of the language you were using, but someone who has undealt with anger, resentment, disappointment, and as a result of that, there may be this attitude of entitlement, right? Of entitlement. Now, anger shows up in a variety of different ways. Some people wear their emotions on their sleeve. And so from a mile away, you can tell this person is pissed, stay away. And then some people smile on the outside and are burning up on the inside, and they operate in a passive aggressive way, right? So their anger on the inside results in things that destroy, much like the person who has anger on the outside. They can be destructive as well, but it manifests differently. But yes, these type of emotions, if they're not addressed and if they're not dealt with, will drive someone to do something. Now, let me just say this, and I want to bring you two into the conversation. When we're talking about emotions, you got to understand that emotions are simply energy in motion. So if we look at the scale of emotions, on one end of the scale, when someone's experiencing sadness or depression, it's a low level emotion. People who are depressed and sad can be in the bed all day, not want to get out. They turn out the lights, they're under the covers, they're sleeping, they don't want to be bothered, they don't want to be engaged. It's low level. A person who has anger or rage, it's a high level of emotions. So the energy that is in motion is high level. And when I'm angry, I'm driven to do something, right? And so oftentimes they may do things that are very destructive rather than properly filtering out that anger and doing something constructive. And so as a result, infidelity could be one of the consequences of unresolved anger. But let's weigh in, ladies. What are your thoughts about the anger, the resentment, and how it taps into one's entitlement?
Man, this point is so relevant. I literally just had this conversation with a client yesterday. Literally, we unpacked the fact that they had a history, a family history of not dealing with issues, not dealing with problems. And so it's definitely a pattern now in this person's life to avoid dealing with real issues. And so what happens, it just builds and builds and builds and collects over time. And then, of course, I call it a volcano effect. When you have things that are bubbling below the surface, eventually there's going to be an eruption. We can't determine when it's going to happen, how impactful it's going to be, who's going to get burnt by the lava once it spews out. We don't know. We can't control it. And so having that undealt with anger, resentment, disappointment, I mean, it literally could be a part of that family marinade. And that's what was going on with this particular client. And they brought that into their marriage. And so with the one spouse saying, hey, you need to deal with this. Well, he doesn't know how. He's never been taught. He's never been shown. So that's what we have to do. We have to get to a place where we learn how to deal with our anger. We learn how to not allow resentment to build and fester, and even disappointments. We have to have those conversations, those courageous conversations with our spouses, to set those expectations, to let them know what we want, what we need. And I said a million times, you cannot hold someone accountable for something that they never knew was an expectation. And you were talking about the pleaser, who often doesn't communicate their wants and needs. Well, the spouse who's now betrayed, they are completely devastated and blindsided because I never knew you wanted that or needed that. So you went out and cheated and didn't even give me an opportunity to course correct. I didn't even know there was an issue. So we have to deal with all of these things, the anger, the resentment, the disappointment, or whatever, because if we don't, it can lead us to being entitled. Well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. I deserve to have this. I deserve to be served. I deserve to be treated like a king. I deserve to be treated like a queen. But you didn't give your spouse the opportunity to course correct. So that's on you. That's not on your spouse.
You know what's interesting, Lakeisha? Like this anger, resentment, disappointment, and entitlement oftentimes can happen when challenges arise in a relationship. And so that's the result. That's how I deal with it. And so as a result, I engage in inappropriate behaviors. But for many people, it's a part of their temperament. It's a part of their personality. They've had that for a long time. You mentioned family marinade. We come from family upbringings where maybe we have been soaked and saturated into anger and disappointment and resentment because that's all we saw. That's what we were exposed to. So we have picked up as a part of our personality this mindset, this attitude, and this disposition, and we bring it into the marriage. So we come in with an attitude of entitlement. And this is what I'm saying. Like, this is why the individual work is so critically important to the healing process, because if you continue to be who you've always been, how could you expect a change and transformation in a marriage that you are a part of, because you're contributing to the atmosphere of that relationship with every thought, with every word, with every behavior, with everything. And so it's so critically important that you get yourself together in this process if cheating ever is to be completely off the list of possibilities for your marriage. Otherwise, you're going to engage in repeat behavior.
Hassani, and I just add one thing in there. And if you have children, you are showing them that anger is how you handle things, how you feel when things aren't going right, or when you're handling a situation. So now when these children become adults, they have something so embedded in them that this is just a natural thing to do. I get upset, I get angry. Things don't go right, I get angry. I start, my spouse is fussing, I leave out, or I turn to someone else. We don't think about what we are showing. We don't have to tell our children what's going on, but they see a whole pattern that now is embedded in them, and they just repeat it.
Yeah, I wanted to add on to that, for a person who is, because some people are just prone to infidelity. Let's just call it what it is, right? Some people are just prone to it. And those who tend to be prone to infidelity, they often assume that everyone thinks and feels and has the same rules that they have. And so they can't even wrap their brain around the idea that someone doesn't think exactly the way that they think or feel exactly the way that they feel.
You're absolutely right. Mindy said boundaries are essential or nothing will change. But then she went on to say, I have a girlfriend that wants to be friendly with my husband without repercussions from me after knowledge of betrayal. Others do not understand boundaries, even if your spouse does. Very true. But I want to go to this question, Papette, if I'm saying that correctly. How do you get the unfaithful to recognize that their secret friend was an emotional affair? Hid for 10 months and another 9 months after issues were first raised, just a friend wouldn't be hidden. Well, listen, we've run out of time. It's 10:01. We got to end the session. But listen, the whole just a friend, that term, I'm telling you. So I would recommend this. Get this book, Not Just Friends. Not Just Friends, Rebuilding Trust and Recovery of Your Sanity After Infidelity by Shirley P. Glass. It's a phenomenal book because when people say we're just friends, check them. It's worthy of a deeper dive. Let's put this friend on the chopping block and see what's really there, because this book will expose in a comprehensive way what you say as a friend is really most likely an inappropriate relationship. Let me just say this whole platonic, the term platonic friend, it means to have an intimate and emotional and affectionate relationship with someone else, even when sex is not involved. But see, that sounds like an emotional affair. Emotional affairs can lead to sex. They don't always do. And so the same emotional connection that you have with the so-called friend is the emotional connection that you should have with your spouse. So listen, guys, we appreciate you for today. That is going to end this series. I can't wait till tomorrow because we're diving into something brand new that I'm really excited about. But we appreciate you being here. Hope you have a great day. Listen, sit down with your spouse, watch these videos together, and allow it to be a blessing to you. If you need help, reach out to us. Just simply go to couplesacademy.org or text us at 678-200-8996 to see how we can serve you. But until then, see you tomorrow. Take care.